White initiates with a solid, opening the game in a balanced manner. The evaluation remains equal. Black responds with, maintaining the dynamic balance and demonstrating accurate development. White plays, a standard move in many openings, keeping the position equal. Black opts for, a solid choice that reinforces the center and keeps equality. White develops the knight to, a natural developing move that maintains equality. Black pins the knight with, a common tactical idea in this type of position. White develops the knight to, preparing to castle and maintaining a balanced game. Black challenges the center with, a dynamic move that keeps the position balanced. White solidifies the center with, a cautious move that keeps the position equal. Black castles kingside, prioritizing king safety and maintaining the game's dynamic balance. White develops the bishop to, aiming to castle and maintain control. Black pushes, centralizing a pawn and keeping the position solid. White castles kingside, a standard move that secures the king and keeps equality. Black captures the pawn on, simplifying the pawn structure slightly. White recaptures with, maintaining central presence and a solid structure. Black captures the pawn on, a sharp exchange that keeps the game equal. White recaptures with, developing the bishop actively. Black supports the bishop with, preparing further development. White centralizes the queen with, connecting rooks and preparing for middle game action. Black develops the bishop to, an active diagonal for the bishop. White develops the bishop to, creating a pin on the knight. Black resolves the pin by capturing the bishop with. White recaptures with, opening the b-file for the rook. Black develops the knight to, a flexible move. White repositions the bishop to, reinforcing the center. Black centralizes the queen with, improving its position. White repositions the bishop to, preparing for potential action on the c-file. Black activates the rook on the d-file, increasing pressure. White places the rook on, contesting the open file. Black repositions the rook to, preparing for central play. White repeats the bishop development to, aiming for tactical possibilities. Black misplaces the queen on, a slight positional inaccuracy. White centralizes the rook to, preparing for action. Black repositions the rook to, reinforcing the queen's file. White maneuvers the bishop to, maintaining the threat. Black moves the queen to, centralizing it and increasing activity. White retreats the bishop to, a slight inaccuracy, losing initiative. Black activates the queen to, a solid positional move. White advances the c-pawn to, a slight inaccuracy that creates weaknesses. Black moves the queen to, a mistake that loses tempo and positional advantage. White develops the knight to, a solidifying move. Black moves the queen to, another mistake that allows white to improve their position. White centralizes the queen to, increasing pressure. Black moves the queen to, a slight inaccuracy that does not help. White plays, reinforcing the king's position. Black centralizes the queen to, seeking counterplay. White develops the bishop to, targeting key squares. Black activates the rook on, consolidating their position. White places the rook on, preparing for an attack. Black moves the queen to, a major mistake that concedes significant advantage. White advances the g-pawn to, exploiting Black's misplaced queen. Black captures the pawn with the knight, a seemingly active move. White recaptures with, opening lines for attack. Black recaptures the pawn with the queen, a necessary response. White develops the bishop to, placing it on an active diagonal. Black develops the knight to, defending key central squares. White maneuvers the knight to, aiming to control central squares. Black pushes, a slight inaccuracy that weakens the queenside. White makes a severe blunder with, losing a significant advantage. Black seizes the opportunity with, a severe blunder that misses the win. White retreats the queen to, maintaining attacking pressure. Black captures the pawn with, a solid exchange. White captures the queen with, a mistake that simplifies the position. Black recaptures with, a standard response. White recaptures the pawn with, developing actively. Black exchanges the knight for the bishop with. White recaptures with, opening the h-file. Black advances the g-pawn to, creating space. White centralizes the rook to, increasing activity. Black repositions the rook to, a slight inaccuracy. White moves the king to, improving its safety and centralizing. Black advances the h-pawn to, creating space. White maneuvers the rook to, targeting the queenside. Black plays, controlling space on the queenside. White develops the bishop to, a slight inaccuracy. Black repositions the king to, improving safety. White places the rook on, putting pressure on the 7th rank. Black develops the bishop to, defending and controlling squares. White moves the rook to, a mistake that reduces the advantage. Black exchanges the bishop for the knight with. White recaptures with, opening the a-file. Black captures the pawn with, a slight inaccuracy. White moves the rook to, a mistake that loses initiative. Black repositions the rook to, a strong defensive move. White maneuvers the rook to, maintaining pressure. Black moves the rook to, a mistake that allows white to consolidate. White captures the pawn with, delivering check and maintaining a strong advantage.